Pharmacy employee insults an old woman for buying medicine with coins, not aware that Keanu Reeves is looking at her closely. It was a quiet afternoon at a small pharmacy in Los Angeles. Keanu Reeves, dressed in his usual casual attire, black jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a worn-out leather jacket, had stopped by to pick up some vitamins. He kept his head low, hoping to avoid unnecessary attention. As he stood near the shelves, examining a bottle of supplements, he overheard a conversation at the counter. An elderly woman, frail but dignified, was slowly counting out coins from a small weathered purse. "Ma'am, I don't have all day." The cashier, a young man with an annoyed expression, snapped. "If you don't have enough money, maybe you should come back later." The old woman's hands trembled as she tried to gather the remaining change. "I'm sorry, dear. This is all I have. My pension doesn't come until next week, and I really need this medicine." The cashier sighed dramatically and rolled his eyes. "This isn't a charity. Do you know how long this line is getting?" A few customers glanced at the scene but said nothing. The tension in the air was palpable. Just as the cashier was about to push the medicine aside, Keanu stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said in his calm, deep voice. The cashier turned, ready to tell the newcomer to wait his turn, until he realized who was standing in front of him. His eyes widened in shock. Keanu placed a crisp $100 bill on the counter. That should cover her medicine and a few extra things she might need. The old woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Oh, young man, you don't have to." Keanu smiled gently. "Please, consider it a gift." The cashier, now visibly sweating, fumbled with the register. "I didn't mean to be rude, sir. I was just—" Keanu held up a hand. "You should treat every customer with respect, no matter how they pay." His voice was steady but firm. "You never know who's watching, or who might need a little kindness." The old woman took her medicine, tears welling in her eyes. "God bless you," she whispered. Keanu simply nodded, gave her a warm smile, and walked out of the store, leaving the entire pharmacy in stunned silence. That day, the cashier learned an unforgettable lesson. And the old woman, she walked home with not only her medicine, but also a story of kindness that she would tell for the rest of her days. As Keanu stepped out of the pharmacy, the cool breeze of the evening brushed against his face. He pulled his jacket a little tighter and walked towards his motorcycle, parked just a few steps away. But before he could start the engine, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Young man, wait!" Keanu turned to see the elderly woman hurrying toward him, clutching the small bag of medicine close to her chest. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude, but there was also something else, curiosity. "You didn't have to do that," she said, slightly out of breath, "but I'm so grateful. People like you. They're rare these days." Keanu chuckled softly. "It was nothing, ma'am. Everyone deserves a little kindness." She studied him for a moment, then gasped softly, "Wait a minute, I know you. You're that actor, Keanu Reeves." Keanu smiled but held up a finger to his lips, signaling for her to keep it quiet. "Guilty as charged," he admitted. The woman chuckled. "I knew I recognized that face. Oh, my late husband loved your movies. He used to say, that Keanu Reeves, he's one of the good ones." Keanu's smile deepened, touched by her words. "Sounds like your husband was a good man." She nodded, her expression softening. "He was, and you remind me of him, always putting others first." Keanu looked down, slightly embarrassed. "I just try to do what's right." The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver coin. "This is all I can give you, but I want you to have it. My husband carried it for years. He said it brought him luck." Keanu hesitated but saw the sincerity in her eyes. He took the coin gently, rolling it between his fingers. "Thank you. I'll keep it with me." The woman patted his arm. "Bless you, Keanu. Keep being you." With a final smile, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the city streets. Keanu looked down at the coin in his hand, feeling its cool metal against his skin. He slipped it into his pocket, started his motorcycle, and rode off into the night, carrying with him a small token of gratitude and a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could make the world a better place. As Keanu rode through the quiet streets of Los Angeles, the weight of the small silver coin in his pocket felt heavier than it should. It wasn't just a trinket. It was a reminder of the kindness that still existed in the world, a reminder of why he always believed in doing good, even when no one was watching. That night, he found himself at a small diner, one of those hidden gems that stayed open late. He sat at the counter, sipping a cup of black coffee, lost in thought. The neon sign outside flickered, casting a warm glow on the rainy pavement. Rough night? The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, asked as she refilled his cup. Keanu shook his head. Not at all. Just thinking about how small moments can change everything. She smiled knowingly. That's the truth. You never know whose life you might be touching, even in the simplest ways. As Keanu took another sip, the door of the diner jingled and someone walked in, looking hesitant, almost ashamed. It was the cashier from the pharmacy. Keanu recognized him instantly, but he said nothing, simply watching as the young man walked over. He looked nervous, clutching his hands together. Mr. Reeves, I didn't expect to see you here, the cashier stammered. Keanu gestured to the empty stool next to him. Take a seat. The young man hesitated, then slowly slid onto the stool. He stared at the counter, avoiding Keanu's gaze. I wanted to say, I was wrong. The way I treated that woman today, it wasn't right. And you didn't have to step in, but you did. It made me think. Keanu leaned back slightly, giving him space to speak. I've been having a tough time, the cashier admitted. Bills, family stuff, I let my stress make me bitter. But seeing you help that woman, like it was the most natural thing in the world, it made me realize how far I've strayed from the kind of person I want to be. Keanu nodded slowly. We all have bad days. What matters is what we do after them. The young man took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I'm going to apologize to that woman, and I'm going to start treating people better. He glanced at Keanu. I just wanted to thank you, not just for what you did, but for showing me what real kindness looks like. Keanu smiled, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the silver coin. He placed it on the counter and slid it toward the young man. Here, Keanu said, a reminder. Kindness always finds its way back to you. The cashier picked up the coin, turning it over in his fingers, just as Keanu had done earlier. Thank you, he said softly. Keanu simply nodded, finished his coffee, and left a generous tip before walking out into the night. As he rode off into the city, he knew that one small act of kindness had not just helped an elderly woman, but it also set someone else on a new path. And that was a kind of magic the world needed more of. The ripple effect. As Keanu rode through the dimly lit streets of Los Angeles, the night air cool against his skin, he couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction settle in his heart. It wasn't about being a hero. It never was. It was about the simple belief that kindness had a ripple effect. Days passed, and life moved on. But the story of that moment in the pharmacy did not end there. The cashier's redemption. The next morning, the young pharmacy cashier, whose name was Adam, arrived at work with a new sense of purpose. He had barely slept, replaying Keanu's words in his head. As the doors of the pharmacy opened, he found himself hoping to see the elderly woman again. He needed to apologize. He needed to make things right. Hours passed, and just as his hope began to fade, the doorbell chimed, and there she was. The same frail woman, wearing the same faded coat, walking in slowly with her purse clutched tightly in her hands. Adam took a deep breath and hurried from behind the counter. Ma'am, wait! The old woman, startled, looked up at him. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Adam stammered. The way I treated you the other day, it was wrong. I let my own frustrations make me cruel, and that's not the kind of person I want to be. I hope you can forgive me. The woman studied him for a moment, then smiled. Oh, dear. We all have bad days. What matters is that you learned from it. Adam exhaled, relief washing over him. I did. And actually, your medicine today? It's on me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver coin Keanu had given him. A kind stranger reminded me that small acts of kindness matter. I want to pass that kindness on. The old woman's eyes widened as she recognized the coin. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it, her voice soft with emotion. That coin, I gave one just like it to a young man the other day. A wonderful man. Adam smiled. I know, that man was Keanu Reeves. The woman gasped, then chuckled. So kindness does have a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? Adam nodded. It really does. Keanu's next encounter. Meanwhile, Keanu continued living his life as he always did. Low profile, always humble, always kind. One evening, he was at a coffee shop, quietly reading a book, when a man in a business suit approached him nervously. "Excuse me, Mr. Reeves," the man said. Keanu looked up, giving his signature polite nod. "Yeah? You don't know me, but my mother was the woman you helped at the pharmacy last week," the man said, his voice thick with emotion. "She told me everything about the cashier, the coin, the lesson you taught him, and I wanted to thank you. You have no idea what that moment meant to her, or to me." Keanu smiled warmly. "Your mother is a wonderful woman. I'm just glad she got what she needed." The man hesitated, then pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "She insisted I give you this." Keanu unfolded it and read the words written in delicate cursive. "Kindness is the bridge between strangers. Thank you for crossing it." Keanu felt a lump in his throat as he read the note. He looked back at the man and nodded. "She's right, and I hope more people choose to cross that bridge every day." With that, Keanu stood, gave the man a firm handshake, and walked out into the night, knowing that even the smallest ripples of kindness could turn into waves. And somewhere across the city, a young cashier, an elderly woman, and a businessman all carried a little more light in their hearts, because one man had chosen to do what was right when no one was looking. The unseen impact. Weeks passed since that fateful day at the pharmacy, and though Keanu had moved on with his life, the ripple effect of his simple act of kindness continued to spread in ways he never could have imagined. Adam's new purpose. At the pharmacy, Adam had transformed completely. No longer the impatient, dismissive employee he once was, he now greeted every customer with kindness, especially the elderly and those struggling financially. One afternoon, he noticed a single mother hesitating at the counter, nervously counting crumpled bills and loose coins while her young daughter clung to her side. Adam saw the worry in the woman's eyes and didn't even wait for her to ask. "Don't worry about the rest," Adam said with a smile, covering the remaining cost of her child's medicine. Tears welled up in the woman's eyes. I don't know what to say." Adam simply placed the silver coin Keanu had given him on the counter and slid it toward her. "Just pass it on when you get the chance." The woman clutched the coin in her palm, nodding through her tears. And just like that, the cycle of kindness continued, an unexpected reunion. Keanu, meanwhile, had nearly forgotten about the whole incident. Life kept him busy, filming projects, motorcycle rides through the city, and his usual moments of solitude in small cafes. One evening, he was walking through a park, enjoying the crisp air, when he noticed a familiar figure sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons. It was the elderly woman from the pharmacy. He approached her with a smile. "You know, I hear pigeons have excellent memories." The old woman turned, her face lighting up. "Keanu!" She beamed, motioning for him to sit beside her. "What a surprise!" Keanu took a seat. "How have you been?" "Oh, much better, and all thanks to you," she said warmly. "You'll never believe it, but that young man, the cashier, he's changed completely. He even helped a struggling mother the other day, all because of what you did." Keanu chuckled. "I didn't do much. He made the choice to change." The woman patted his hand. "That's where you're wrong, dear. Sometimes people just need a push, a reminder that goodness still exists. You were that reminder." Keanu nodded, looking out at the setting sun. "Maybe." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, folded piece of paper and handed it to her. It was the note her son had given him, the one she had written. "Kindness is the bridge between strangers. Thank you for crossing it." The woman gasped, her eyes welling up. "You kept it?" Keanu smiled. "Of course, some words are worth holding on to." The two of them sat there in comfortable silence, watching the world move around them, two strangers forever connected by a simple moment of kindness. And somewhere, across the city, the silver coin continued its journey, reminding each new person who held it that a little kindness could change the world. The end. The journey of the silver coin. Months passed, and the silver coin continued its quiet journey, passed from one hand to another, carrying with it the spirit of kindness that Keanu had set in motion. Each person who received it found themselves at a crossroads, faced with an opportunity to choose generosity over indifference. A bus driver's decision. One rainy evening, a tired city bus driver named Miguel was nearing the end of his shift. As he pulled up to a stop, an exhausted young woman stepped aboard, drenched from the downpour. She searched her pockets, but her face fell in disappointment. She had no money for the fare. Before she could turn away in embarrassment, a passenger in the back, the single mother who had received the silver coin from Adam, stood up. She walked to the front and handed the coin to Miguel along with a few bills. "For her fare," she said with a warm smile. Miguel examined the old, well-worn coin, feeling an inexplicable sense of connection to it. He nodded, waved the young woman onto the bus, and pocketed the coin. As he drove through the wet streets, he thought about how many people he had seen struggling over the years. He had always done his job, but had he ever truly helped? That night, the silver coin reminded him that he could do more. The next morning, Miguel started keeping a small jar of change near his dashboard for anyone who couldn't afford their fare. The journalist who noticed. One day, a young journalist named Claire boarded Miguel's bus and noticed the small jar of coins near the dashboard. Curious, she asked him about it. Miguel smiled and told her the story, about the woman who had given him the silver coin, about the cashier who had changed his ways, about the kind stranger at the pharmacy who had started it all. Claire was intrigued. "Keanu Reeves, you said?" Miguel nodded. Claire felt a story forming. She spent the next few weeks tracking down the people connected to the coin, the single mother, the old woman, Adam the cashier. With every interview, she saw how one small act of kindness had spread like ripples in a pond, touching lives in unexpected ways. When her article was published, titled "The Journey of a Silver Coin," how one act of kindness changed a city, it quickly gained attention. Readers were inspired. People all over the city started leaving small acts of kindness in their wake, buying coffee for strangers, covering grocery bills for those in need, even leaving encouraging notes in public spaces. The story eventually made its way to Keanu himself. Keanu reads the story. Sitting in his quiet home, Keanu scrolled through the article on his phone. As he read the stories of people he had never met but whose lives had been touched by that single moment in the pharmacy, he couldn't help but smile. It wasn't about him. It never had been. It was about people, about the choice to be kind, even when no one was watching. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out another silver coin. Not the same one, of course, but one that looked just like it. He had collected small mementos like this over the years, reminders of the good in the world. With a thoughtful expression, he stood up, grabbed his jacket, and stepped out into the bustling city streets. Somewhere out there, another person needed a reminder that kindness still existed, and Keanu Reeves was always willing to cross that bridge. The end, or maybe just the beginning.